Miri Eisen, former senior IDF intelligence officer, joins us now from Tel Aviv, and then in Washington, former CIA officer, Mr. Norman Roule. Thank you so much for joining us. Miri, we'll start with you. You know the Arab arena very well from your years in the IDF intelligence. Give us your analysis on the situation, especially on the northern front, which disturbs Israel enormously these hours.
All of us right now have our eyes towards the northern front. When we talk right now about the ongoing both possibility of the ground operation, which seems fait accompli, opposite the Hamas, let's look at that northern front and understand that Hezbollah has 10 times the amount of capabilities. Eitan Dangote alluded to that before. I don't think that we understand what that means for the people who live up north. Oh, so we shouldn't take care of it? Hezbollah, in my terms, has been of testing the waters. They're trying to see our reactions. They want to show that they're participating. They have all of the capabilities. I sit and listen to what the Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah has to say, what he has said today and in the last few days, because he openly says that he has supplied both capabilities, training, weapons themselves to Hamas. I'm not sure how much that is true, but what he says even more clearly is that they're all in, that this is the beginning of the big war. And so it really becomes a question, who starts, who preempts? They've been trying and testing the waters, as I said. I certainly think that that's going to be the development in the north.
Norman Roule in Washington, the administration is very much against the war in the north. It sends its forces to protect or to assist Israel, but at the same time, as far as I understand, it tells Israel, don't do anything on yourself or by yourself. If you're being attacked, obviously, then fight.
Good evening, and let me begin by offering my deepest condolences to the families of those who have lost so many in this horrific tragedy, and assure you that Israel's many friends in the United States will do what they can to support you during this
Thank you very much for that.
Time. I'm not sure that the advice that you mentioned is needed by the government of Israel. This said, we have a situation where Iran has not many strategic drivers for its direct involvement in this conflict, but multiple incentives to direct all of its proxies in the region, from Lebanese Hezbollah to the Houthis, to not only rhetorically stand with Hamas and to indicate that they might pressure Israel in order to divert resources away from Hamas, but to undertake operations that raise the international community's sense that a further expansion is likely. This brings Iran into the international arena, raising its profile with a number of great powers, and also shapes international, or rather regional, Arab opinion. It's a very dangerous time.
And so what do you hear from the administration, and how far it is ready to go? Because, wishing for it or not, the situation is so delicate in Israel, it might find itself, in a direct or indirect war in the north with Iranian forces, maybe with Russian forces. This is, an unknown field that we're stepping into. Norman, can you hear us?
Oh, I apologize. I thought this was the other guest. So there are three postures the administration has taken. First, it has ensured that Israel has the materiel and the replenished weaponry it needs to defend itself and to undertake its own operations. Second, we have moved a massive amount of firepower with the Gerald Ford aircraft carrier and the incoming Dwight Eisenhower aircraft carrier to assist if necessary. And last, there is an unprecedented, intensive diplomatic campaign to bring in a number of our regional partners to press all of the players to de-escalate and to prevent an expansion. I think Israel can count on the United States doing what it can to support Israel, but the many hypothetical situations that are before us make it very difficult to predict how that might play out.
Yes. So, Miri, on to you. Forever and ever, Israel said Thank you, but no thank you to foreign involvement when it comes to our business, our wars. We said we can defend ourselves by ourselves. And currently, we're seeing a different situation in which the U.S. might need to get involved. That shows, on one hand, the deep support that Israel gets from the U.S. and other Western regimes. But on the other hand, it might be perceived in this area, in the Middle East, as an Israeli weakness.
We're not talking about support right now. Right now, it's really what was presented before so eloquently. It's both the moral support, it's the munitions. Those are things that have always been there, Yoav. They'll continue to be there. What we're looking at in this stage, and again, we're saying the hypothetical, is the possibility, and to me a very strong one, that Hezbollah is going to join in. Hezbollah as both a Lebanese organization, as an Iranian proxy, and that is not a situation that the world has faced before. This isn't about Israel defending itself alone. It's about the world against the type of barbaric attack that took place a week ago Saturday, and the one that before, when you were showing Hezbollah terror operatives training, Hezbollah has been training on this same kind of scenario for years. We were much more always in the face talking about how that could be. So I'm not in that sense if the United States, and not just the United States, would step in as there was against a kind of attack if it's ISIS or Al-Qaeda. And yes, I am doing that comparison, and I have not done so in the past. And if I may, I'd like to add one more point, which is
Please
in the
do.
subtext of everything we're saying. Is that okay?
Of course, please do.
Absolutely. That in the subtext of what we're talking about, I actually sat at the studio of I-24 News pretty much almost the night before this started on a program which was about the 1973 war. And the question that was asked at the beginning, both to Eitan Dangot, who was in the studio before, and to myself was, could an intelligence failure happen like that again? And both Eitan and I answered on that night, this is the night before it happened, of course it could, because it always can. And so right now what we're seeing also is the result of the failure and the chaos, but we still have, Israel is not disappearing. We do not need any assistance in that sense, opposite what we're doing to get back the hostages and with, again, militarily in the area of the Gaza Strip. When it comes to Lebanon, you're opening up a whole new can of worms, and it's not something that we've seen in this arena before.
Yes, Norman, I want to go back to you, asking you, Miri mentioned that surprise that the Israeli intelligence, the Israeli army, the Israeli people were caught by. What explanations you hear in Washington? Because Israel was very strong when it came to intelligence. In fact, it assisted the U.S. forces in that area in the Middle East quite a lot of times with intelligence, and we, kings of intelligence, or as we thought we are, were caught completely by surprise. And we even hear reports that Israel was warned by Egypt, by the U.S., etc. Do you have any explanations? What do you hear on the other side of the Atlantic?
There'll be plenty of time to look at this issue in the future. Of course, the priority of intelligence organizations now is to determine if there are any other surprises, how the hostages are being handled and where they're located, and what Iran and its proxies are up to. I do think it's important to put this intelligence question into context. It is absolutely correct that Israel did not expect this attack, an attack on this scale. That is an intelligence failure, and but there may be many ways to shape that. At the same time, neither did the United States, Great Britain, Egypt, or Qatar, all of whom have certain access, responsibilities, or focus on Hamas. Hamas is a terrorist organization. It was declared a terrorist organization by the United States in 1997, in part because it killed Americans. We don't cede our terrorism intelligence responsibilities to other countries any more than you would. There were indications, but I think we need to be very cautious that any country had a report that said something like this was going to happen, because if we were close to that, I can assure you that every policymaker involved, from Washington to Egypt, Europe, wherever, would have announced to the world something terrible is happening, if only because their own national security equities were going going to be so impacted. So there is no shame in failure. There is dishonor, however, in not taking responsibility by the world against a terrorist organization that threatens all of us.
Yes. So one more question, Norman. Looking at legitimacy, Israel, as you started by saying, is enjoying bipartisan support, in Capitol Hill. And I think in most of the American media and public. How long can it last? Considering, pictures coming from Gaza, hundreds of thousands of people being forced to leave their homes, etc., etc. Israel needs that support, needs that legitimacy to keep on fighting. Can we trust that? Can we build on that for a long time?
I believe you can. However, it's fair to say that there are different views on Israel than we have had in the past. Americans who tend to be somewhat older tend to have much stronger support of Israel and its fight against Palestinian extremism than the youngest American voters. Secondly, we don't know what the future is going to hold. One terrifically terrible image of Palestinian killed will shape public opinion, and we should be prepared for that and make sure it's handled responsibly. Last, certain actions just won't play well for obvious reasons with the public. Cutting off of water, there are no good ways of saying that that's a powerful security move, and that will shift public opinion. But Israel has restored water. Israel has responded with a careful attacks to prevent Palestinian casualties. But over time, as the number of children die in Gaza, as the number of Arabs die, innocent civilians die in Gaza, that will have an impact on public opinion, which is why intelligence and security force must do everything it can to make this campaign successful and expedite its end and come up with a policy solution in the end to address legitimate Palestinian requirements.
Miri, we'll sum up with you after your years with the intelligence. You served in the Prime Minister office, dealing exactly with that legitimacy, working with international media, etc. Can Israel have the upper hand on that? Because we've seen demonstrations in London yesterday, for example. We hear many, celebs around the world cursing Israel, etc. Can Israel keep its cause and have the legitimacy that it needs so much those days?
Yoav, I think that one of the most strong parts of the resilience of Israel is how we have come out in a voice which is a calm voice and a civil voice talking about both Hamas's ISIS. I truly think that Israel protects Palestinians in the Gaza Strip way more than Hamas ever did. I think that those voices coming out of when we hear the Palestine from the sea through the river through the sea are voices where I want to stand up and shake people on the one hand. I see in this time that there has been an enormous change, but let's be clear, there is a legit Palestinian issue. That is not what this conflict is about. And I really think that we've impacted governments around the world. I don't only think, Norman, that it's people who are older. I think that it has to do with people who are in different situations. There's most definitely a challenge, but that doesn't mean that we're not there. And as Norman said before, and I really do agree with that, my heart can go out to a Palestinian baby. And I think that I, as an Israeli, as a military person, are trying to protect those Palestinian babies way more than Hamas has ever done. They're going to use our hostages. It's going to be horrific pictures. They're going to do that for the psychological warfare against us. But in public opinion right now, it's something that you have to be in it and talk calmly day after day.
Miri Eisen in Israel, Norman Roule in Washington, thank you so much for joining us today.